surprised if we find differences, also tiny differences across the years. So the other thing we are here today is the presentation of our new product, Valdo product, DOCG, organic. This is called Amor Soli, so the love for our territory. And this is a product that we intended to dedicate to the Valdobbiadene area, which has given us so much over the years. And of course, this idea was conceived during the period of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, but it is also the result of our unfailing commitment to our territory and to our production and, of course, to our next generations. So I will expand on the concept of sustainability to tell you what we've been doing in the past years, and then I will leave the floor to Gianfranco for the presentation of the products. So, given the UN indications, we have been committing for more than 5 years, 10 years, in green, so-called green activities, not only in the field, but also in our production processes. And I am making reference to all of the green certifications that we have acquired, but I also make reference to the photovoltaic plant that we have installed last summer. And therefore, this next harvesting is 100% sustainable. But this commitment, however, has not been grown only through the reduction of CO2 or reducing the water consumption in order to make all the materials also sustainable, like, for example, the Amor Soli label. But this is also translated into the company governance, the economic sustainability report that we draft every year. And of course, this is also a commitment that is translated into social proximity and a social commitment. And I'm talking about all the non-profit activities that we've been implementing at Valdobbiadene. Amor Soli represents the way we want to thank our nature that has been giving us so much over the years. And I hope that you can appreciate it both in the spirit, but also with regard to the content of the bottle. And of course, if you have questions at the end, I will be happy to answer any request. So now the word to you, Gianfranco. So thank you, President. This is an honor for me being here in Milan to present the slight use of the Valdo production, Valdobbiadene. So we were talking about vintage wines. So both the Valdobbiadene DOCG and the Prosecco world come as very important wines. And in this case, we are having a different type of exercise in terms of the approach to the product, in terms of the type of the sugar content and processing. So we are going to discover 6 Spumanti which have a completely different process. So, as I'm used to say, I am a an enologist on trial, and I've been working in this field 32 years, and I'm still discovering new things. Why that? Because every year is different. Every tiny area in our territory is different, with the different characteristics, with different slopes and exposure, south, southwest, and south east. And also the people are different because, of course, this also has an impact in terms of knowledge, expertise that is contributed, and very frequently we give it for granted, but actually this is not really so, because if the Prosecco vine has been planted in this territory, there is a terroir, there are characteristics, but there is also the man and people's interaction. And of course, Valdobbiadene is now part of the UNESCO, and this is because actually we implement production processes that are always in line with the territory. So therefore, we follow the hills, and especially at the Valdobbiadene Conegliano, in the core zone from Valdobbiadene to Vittorio Veneto, you will find this sort of embroidery developed by the vines. And of course, we have hand harvesting, and this is one of the first elements that we are going to note. And the terroir is so much input. Without the territory, without the interaction of the people, the product, and the culture deriving from that product would not be possible. And I give you, and I would like to leave this with you as a message, because everything starts from a microclimate, a terroir, and the territory, the area, geographic area, because our hills have different origins. And we have the moraine, and we have a completely different situations, one at Valdobbiadene, one at Valdobbiadene, covering and extending to Conegliano, and then the Conegliano area itself. So maybe we can start with the first wine, and the exercise now is to make you know these big, small wines. So there's vintage wines, and they share a common denominator. So here we have we have the sparkling process that is 9 months, 12 months, and we have 3 Spumanti. We divided it for 2 years, but with a very special interpretation. So Rive is a dialect. And in fact, so in our territory, we do not say let's go to the field, but we go to the riva, and this is very typical of our territory. And in this case, we thought of producing an extreme version, also with regard to the sugar residue. So here, so we have already talked about the territory, didn't we? So, and for the river, we thought of making a presentation of the sugar residue. This is an extra brut, and this is why we have called it extra brut. And so with the 0 content of sugar. So it's very difficult to start with this type. Normally, we recommend to start the tasting with a different one, but today this was not possible, so I introduce it. We start with a softer type so that the palate gets used to the characteristics of our territory. So let's start with this special, because this is very dry, extreme, and this is very essential. There is no sugar, which could have given a softer roundness. But this is a limited production. With regard to this label, we put the date of the harvesting, so there is a very strict traceability, and this starts from 2 vineyards at San Pietro di Barbozza. And San Pietro di Barbozza is an area that starts from Valdo and goes up to the highest hills, 350 meters of altitude. So therefore, this is a perfect territory for Spumanti-based wine. I don't know whether you've been served the first glass. Well, this is a very special type, essential, and the 2 years differentiate. So 2019 is a, let me say, normal year. With early harvesting compared to the usual time, so mid-September. In 2018, there was a later harvesting after September the 20th. And 35 years ago, we were harvesting at the beginning of October, in the first 10 days of October. The climate has changed, and therefore, there was a need to anticipate harvesting. (2019) means that this has been bottled 1 year ago, and this is called a Prosecchino normally, but please remove this term immediately. But actually, we can have a different type of satisfaction here. So this mineral. These minerals and the 0% sugar, this is something we can note, we can observe. And even if the wine has been bottled 1 year ago, this is still a wine to be discovered with with the flavor, with a very intense flavor. And this is 100% glare, and so therefore this is a very lean vine. It's not Chardonnay, and we cannot even consider the yield extreme, and so therefore we have 130 quintals per hectare, but in this case we have 120 quintals per hectare. So it's very interesting to make a comparison between 2019 and 2018. 2018, it is integer, but it's been bottled 2 years ago, so we observe a stronger evolution. So for Brut and Brut Nature, this is even more remarkable. We have this white flowery notes, but also the minerals and a slightly bitter aftertaste, which is positive, completing the product. And this is a type that can be, that is not suitable for aperitifs, but certainly for meals. And we can define a micro-territory, a micro-terroir, presenting it to the consumers over the years with the different characteristics. And the 2018 is still very good. The color is stronger, But if you think that this wine has been harvested in 2018, the sparkling process completed in January, so bottled, 2 years ago, so maybe you may associate it with other types instead of Conegliano Valdobbiadene. So now we start with the third one. The two products are the cuvée of the founder. This is a tribute to Sergio Bolla, the founder of the company, the man who has taken care of the company for so long, before Pierluigi. Now here we have a true, real cuvée. We have a more enological exercise due to the assembly, where we have 100% glare, but also we have 8 to 10% depending on the years. So therefore there is no fixed recipe for each wine because it depends on the different years. So this 10% is a second step to know, and before being assembled and sparkled. So we have long Charman, very long, up to 12 months with yeast. And so the bottling comes at the end of the year after harvesting. But we started this in the 80s, then we formalized it in the 90s, and the intention was to bring to the consumer a product with a distinctive style, a unique style in the denomination. As a matter of fact, we do not have other products like this. Being totally recognized and with a more, let me say, international flavor. So we still have flowery. We have 8 grams per liter of sugar residue, so rather dry, lean, clean. And with regard to in addition to the white flowery notes, we have fresh croissant, boisé, this light vanilla note, which is very delicate, in order to keep it within the denomination. Maybe this is slightly borderline, but this is an exercise in order to make consumers understand that with these slight hues, we can have a product with different distinctive characteristics. And also in this case, the first wine is 2019. Then we will also taste another one, date 2018, with 2 years of bottling. And then, of course, if you have questions, I will be more than pleased to answer your questions. But I would like to understand whether you have observed differences, different hues, or if you like it, if you find it pleasant. So because we are here to test these products. Definitely, the 2018 is stronger. It is more evolved because the flowery notes fade away. But then wood comes and dominates, and also Chardonnay, even in a lower percentage, starts growing, and also in the aging, this becomes. This starts to stand out. And of course, preservation must be at ambient, at constant temperature. And obviously, these should not be kept in the refrigerator, because otherwise the refrigerator would kill, let me say, the characteristics of the product. So for Spumanti wines, the long Charman, 9 months the first and 12 months the other two. And of course, in this case, in the first case, we have absolute traceability from the vineyard to the bottle. And in the second, third, fourth Spumanti, we have a research-oriented, innovation-oriented features. One of our mantras is, since this is a company that in a few years will celebrate 100 years of activity in the production of sparkling wines, real production of sparkling wines, to combining innovation with the tradition has become one of their mantras. And this is even more of the essence today, because everybody got aware of the fact that we need to go back to the knowledge of our territory, because that we use every day, and we need also to start respecting it even more in order to preserve it for the future generations. So let's start a different type of exercise. Well, I call these exercises because all these products start as an experimentation before being offered to the consumers. And of course, these products are not immediately offered to the public. Of course, we have tasting sessions during the sparkling process, during the aging process, in order to understand the potential. So therefore, there are various exercises carried out. Some exercises are not even ever presented to the consumers. So now we have the classic process. So we have a glare. So a glare vine, this classic processing, this is made with a Chardonnay, Pinot Nero, and so on and so forth. Even if all over the world we find various types. Actually, our history started with a re-fermented in the bottle. And actually, this was done in the springtime, because this type of wine was slightly sweet. And then starting from there, we had an evolution with the traditional method, processing method. And starting from 2004, Valdo presented this very special type. In 2017, we had an additional evolution thanks to the experimentations made over the time, starting from 2011. So you can understand how many years. So from the 12 months of classical processing, so maybe we should try a different period, 24 months. So therefore, you're going to taste the Tenuta Radase now, and you know that vineyards can be registered if they remain in the specific characteristics of a specific geographical area according to the ministerial rules. And so this vineyard, this is called Radase, and we have called the wine Tenuta Radase. So maybe we're going to call it Vigna Radase in the future. So this is part of the glare of Prosecco, because here we recovered all the local vines that we have in our denomination, largely abandoned so far, because, for example, Perer is subject to a specific problems, and therefore we have Bianchetta Verdisio, and Bianchetta is very productive, I would say, but with the fluctuating performances from year to year, and also in this case this has been abandoned, and also the other one has been abandoned because of a very poor yield. So these vines can still be used in the production process up to a percentage of 15%. And so we have planted new Verdisio, Bianchetta, Pereira vines. So in order to go back to the traditional concept, with a 24-month classical method. Let's taste the 2018 first and then 2017 next. DOCG Spumanti, presented in the brut version, so 6 gram liter of sugar residue, so we may define it as extra brut. But let me say that this 24-month aging gives the product different characteristics and very interesting characteristics. First of all, the color. The color of the glare has always remained with this greenish hue, which you won't ever find in any other vineyard, like a Chardonnay, which are yellowish. So here we reduced the quantity per hectare in each vineyard in order to obtain a specific flavor orientation. So therefore, also in this case, so therefore the wine is very round, pleasant, and of course we needed to present the product properly, because if you taste this wine without knowing what it is, you would never think this is a Conegliano wine. But instead, if you think it more in depth, if you think of the other characteristics, you will find them. So you will find the right harmony. Here, the difference between the 2 years is very evident, because the 2017 was a very special year because of the very cold weather we have had, and normally on the hills we do not have too low temperatures, as it was the case in 2017. And as, for example, in other geographic areas like Champagne, etc. But also the initial phase, so we've been harvesting rather late, and so we presented this product later on, and so we harvested grapes, mature, maybe with a lower concentration of acidity, and maybe this roundness was later also converted into the wine. So, and actually, I believe the Verdisio and Bianchetta and Pereira, which are semi-aromatic, I believe these are noticeable, and these are harvested before Pereira because they ripe earlier. So therefore, I don't know whether you can detect the difference, but I believe this is rather evident. So we have tasted so far these 6 vintage years, as Dr. Bolla was mentioning earlier on. And so here we have our big and small Spumanti. These are very important to us, and they represent our daily commitment. And so we are talking about Valdobbiana DOCG. We are no longer talking about what we were saying before, but a spumante, which is meant to find its position, and this is our winning asset. The 7th wine is new. This is brand new. Actually, this actually is a preview for you, and this is an exercise that we've been carrying out for years. We presented in 2016 an organic version as Prosecco, and this exercise is we've been carrying out this exercise in line with the SPNQ standard, and so therefore we pay a great deal of attention to to what we do in the vineyards. So we also provide all of our vine growers with the training, and we raise also awareness with regard to sustainability. And the last result of this great deal of attention that we've been paying is this one, Brut, from certified organic grapes, 2020. 4-month Charman aging, and this starts from a basic concept, very simple, or apparently simple, let me say. So bringing the integrity of the grapes to the bottle and to the glass. And so no chemical process has been implemented because we wanted to maintain the wine integrity. So I don't know whether we have been successful, but you will tell me. The result is excellent minerals and flavor of the product. It's going back to ancient styles. So we've been using select organic yeast in compliance with the applicable rules, EU rules, in order to provide these characteristics of fullness and roundness. And this flavor, which is slightly powdery in the end, and this mandel that you will become stronger and stronger in the upcoming months. So this was our enological journey. Obviously, these products feature interesting characteristics, and well, this, of course, the harvesting has been anticipated at the beginning of September, and due to the processing with copper, of course, maturation is slower, so they are harvested 10 days after. So this meant mid-September last year. With limited productions, because one of the positive side and negative side for the wine grower is the fact that organic yields are lower. And well, for this reason, for the small portion of organic production, here we have 100 quintals per hectare. So this concentration is also correlated to the fact that we have low production per hectare. Yes, we can perceive the flowery note, and specifically wisteria. So we have completed this journey. So if you have questions, I will be more than happy to answer your questions, and then I will leave the floor to the president, who will add something more. Let me add some other information and insights. I believe that the challenge Valdo has been facing with vintage wines was to maintain the typical Prosecco characteristics, flowery notes, this great versatility to accompany consumers in different occasions, but also with the challenge of presenting more structured wines. And this is evidence of the company's commitment into carrying out new experimentations, new exercises. First of all, for the purpose of contributing to the improvement of the quality of our production. So therefore, through quality improvement, we can also improve our value added. And you know that Italian wines in general have been facing lately some difficulties. So contributing to the improvement of quality, not only of Valdo products, but also of the production of the UNESCO protected territory from the Valdobbiadene hills to Vittorio Veneto and Conegliano. And then also coming out, abandoning this idea of spritz and Aperol spritz, a product that can be served on different occasions, but enjoying our wines everywhere in the world. So with regard to Prodase, it is proper to say that the Veneto region last year, together along with other regions, released a manual of vineyards, and Pradase is a vineyard which is at the center of Valdobbiadene, and we are refurbishing an old building there, where it seems also that Napoleon spent a couple of nights, but this is a legend. In any case, this is an old building which is going to be renamed into the Casa Valdo, and I hope that for the next edition of Vinitaly, you will have a chance to visit it. And here we're going to carry out many other initiatives. So if you have questions, I believe in such a session, it's very much interesting, to have also an exchange of opinions. Good morning, Luca Scainelli. I would like to ask you a couple of questions. The first, you're an enologist, so organic wine. Do you think that organic wine will be will it remain an experiment, or will it become a key product? Second question, do you think to shift the whole production to organic production or not? Because but you said that if production is going to be reduced, then this means that costs are going to go high. Well, if we consider the Conegliano Valdobbiadene production, only 3% of the vineyards are certified as organic. And well, the theme of organic production is interesting. For 20 years, I've been telling that it's very much important to pave the organic production orientation. And, but if I have to produce organically at all costs with our climate, the climate that from continental, it's becoming subtropical, also on our hills. I define it subtropical because lots of rain, winter, very humid, but instead continental climate meant cold cold winters and low temperatures. But this is no longer the case. So organic orientation means that this is a goal. Somebody will reach it, but on those areas and hills that are easy to process, because since we are working, we have hand processing. So we are harvesting by hand. If it's pouring with rain, this is going to be very difficult. So I have to balance. The need for organic production, and maybe I do not reach the certification because sometimes maybe I could not really respect all the criteria, but still this is my orientation. So this is what we are doing with the SPQNB. So this is the national certification of integrated production, and in the UNESCO program, this is one of the commitments that the Veneto region has taken towards UNESCO. So by 2030, we are going to have a certification of the Valdobbiadene Conegliano vineyard. So therefore, as we are a bio district already, and this is very much important. It is true that we have 8,000 hectares of vineyards. We have only one cultivation, but we also have a large area of woods. So on top of our hills, and in addition to Napoleon, as the president was mentioning, we also had during the First World War, we had the Austro-Hungarian front towards the Piave River, and so we had the Austro-Hungarian front. We still have the the trenches, but we also have the orchids, wild orchids, which spontaneously blossom there. So the theme of the woods is also very much important, because also with regard to the CO2 emissions, well, the vineyards is already balanced, but there we still have something to consider in terms of green certification. So therefore, the organic production is a goal, is an orientation, but should not be an imposition. It should because if I have to produce organically, but then in order to do this, I have to expose the grapes to 30 treatments containing copper, this is something to consider. And heavy metal penetrates the soil, of course, and of course this kills the microflora. So therefore, we needed to find a balance. And of course, in south of Italy, organic vine growing is easier. So starting from Monferrato Hills and Coglio Hills on our latitude, well, this is more difficult. We are carrying out research. There is a possibility to reduce the quantity of copper used from 6 to 4, given by the EU. This is already something, but nevertheless, this is an orientation. And also, with regard to our vine growers, we pay them the certification so that they are stimulated in reaching this goal. And we have reached, for now, 40% of the total. My question. So you had already experience with the organic production with the DOC. What is the portion of organic in the Amorsoli? And the Tenuta Pradase, well, also that one is very close to the concept of organic production. So maybe also this might be considered. Well, the decision was made in 2016 to start with the organic Prosecco as a result of a collaboration with a company. So first of all, but the problem with the organic production is that you have to continue it for years. It's not just a spot production in 1 year. And in the Prosecco DOC world, also the situation of the hills, well, this type of certification is easier. On our hills, well, we are getting to the point, we are getting there. This is a part of our commitment. And one of the themes, which I never mentioned because I'm involved in the technical part, is the commercial part. In the trade, in the market, we have the buyers who do not recognize the delta value of the organic wine because organic wines do have the same costs. So Nova Siciliana, for example, so I'm mentioning this because we have a collaboration also with other products. This is easier. So if I want to find a certified vine in Sicily, well, the cost will be just 10 cents more. So therefore, in 2014, in the province of Trapani, they lost quintals of grapes because they didn't know anything about Pronospera. And so there are different situations, different conditions. And with regard to Tenuta Pradase, well, as soon as the APE certification was released, we got it. We have not yet, we are waiting now for the Nutri-Score, because also with regard to the eco-labeling, well, there is much evolution, there is much confusion also at the EU level. So we are waiting to understand whether we are going to use a QR code or but nevertheless, we are going to communicate to the consumers clearly what we are doing, definitely. So we are not thinking of organic production here because we don't want to have too many treatments in the vineyards. Because this is going to because this has repercussions on the workers. So therefore, again, we needed to find a balance between the different needs. So we do not have residues. We have a monitoring activity on our grapes, on our wines, on all the mass that is brought to sparkling, and residues are very much below the legal thresholds. And of course, we have traces because in the past we had analysis point, and now we have 0.0001 one thousandths of gram. So this is how we are progressing. So I would like to add something with regard to Prodase. You know that in the Prosecco tradition, we have sparkling wine fermented in a bottle on yeast. As a company, we never we always believed in the Spumanti, and we have considered the Spumanti our key product. The enological exercise that we are currently carrying out with the classical method refers to understanding annually with the different productions, different grapes, types of grapes, because We have a 100% Glera. The other classical methods are Pinot or Chardonnay, and therefore they are classical methods with grapes that is grape types that are traditionally suitable for them. But we are talking about Glera, 100% Glera. And so with our exercise, we want to understand up to what extent the Glera aging with our abilities can be sustained in terms of pleasantness, flavor, etc., maintaining all the characteristics that we were talking about before unchanged. And I'm proud to say that we are the only company in the Valdo region which can produce a vertical on Prosecco. This is normally done on Russian wines or important wines. Now we can complete a vertical with the 2010 year, but also 2012, 2015, 2017. So why not this idea maybe next year when we are going to meet again without this, maybe we are going to have a vertical of Prosecco, a classical method. That would be very good. So the first one we have tasted, a fresh one. Do you think that you're going to increase also the number of bottles? Because, well, the concept is that in the product range Valdo produces, there are some products that are limited editions, sort of saying, limited productions. And, the company decides every year the quantity of these limited productions and based on also various criteria. But these are going to remain limited quantities because this is a zero dosage, and I really love this. So I really liked it, and so therefore, well, we have a potential. So these two vineyards can produce up to 35,000 bottles. So this is 50%. But the decision was made to limit this production and attribute it to our commercial network and our best customers. I would like to ask the following. I understand that you would like to replace Prosecchino and the Spritz. But apart from presenting these products, which definitely meet all the requirements to replace them, concretely, what do you think of doing in order to persuade consumers to enjoy a Spumanti instead of a Prosecchino or Spritz? But what is the difficulty in communicating this? What can you do? What do you think? Because,
No, assolutamente. Allora,
well,
le faccio per cercare di rispondere alla
in order
sua
to try and answer your
le
question, which
faccio un
is very
esempio. Non
stimulating,
so
I give you an
se si ricorda
example.
come si consumava il
I don't
prosecco
know whether you remember how
negli anni
people
90, se uno veniva
tasted
consumato
Prosecco at the end of the
veniva
80s.
fatto in
On
pescitori
the fish restaurants
ad
along the Brenta
il
River, Do,
il
Stralo,
sugo
etc., and on the Adria Adriatic coast, they were served as a sparkling wine, and therefore restaurants were stimulated to serve it
Questo è stato
in
l'inizio della diffusione del Prosecco.
in
Sappiamo che, credo, oltre 20 anni,
in
la
bulk.
modalità è
And after 20 years,
imporre
we
una
have come to a point in which we have to develop a culture of Prosecco. And, uh,
io credo che
and I
oggi
believe that
dobbiamo mettere
today
in atto
we
che il
need
Prosecco
to
è qualcosa
acknowledge
di
that
diverso
Prosecco is
dei
the
colori
most important
politici,
thing that has
significa anche essere
happened
rimasto
in the
sul
enological
territorio del mondo più
sector.
produtto sul
This is
territorio
the
credo che
best
sia
selling
un'opportunità
DOC product, and I believe this is already excellent. But we needed to think of the next 20 years, and this is all about culture. And for the entire area, not only for Valdo, it is important to communicate this culture, develop this culture, and it will take the time it takes. And it's not like in the pharmaceutical world or in the chocolate industry, you only have 3, 4 companies with huge budgets and they can impose their products. In DOCG, we have over 500 companies, producers, and 6 and 7 exceed 20 million euros in terms of sales and turnover. So this is a commitment, definitely. This is a significant commitment. And if this commitment will turn into a winning asset, then the next generation will take benefit from it. Well, I do agree with what you're saying, and I know this line of products, and I do agree that they need to be explored and tasted in combination with food, not only with regard to regional recipes, but also Asian cuisine may be accompanying it. But I would not avoid tasting Prosecco anche in simpler occasions. As a matter of fact, Valdo, as you said at the beginning, we are tasting the exclusive labels still accessible because they have this great advantage of accessibility. But Valdo is not only this. Valdo is a line of products that is easy to find, and they can also be easily mixed in the end. Many other denominations are looking for introducing their products in this mixing world. So a good spritz is not devilish, let me say. But in fact, well, when a spritz is offered with bottled wine is one thing. When a spritz is offered with bulk wine, this is a completely different thing. So, but also in this case, we can make a difference in a certain way. So, but definitely it is true that Prosecco can be used alone as aperitif. But I think that it is important to make people understand, consumers understand that Prosecco is a spumante with a history, with its origin, and as a matter of fact, Prosecco wine is the most frequently drunk wine in the world, and spritz is a cocktail that everybody has drunk as well. Yes, and in fact, in order to be clear, so if Valdo can afford detecting these products, researching these products, this is due to the fact that our work is extensive, not only in Italy but also abroad, and in fact part of its production enters mixology. But spritz was also fashionable 40 years ago. So across the generations, we have products coming and going. And this is Italian wine must be protected, and Italian wines can be protected through culture and through innovation. So, okay, yes, you were right. So together, bollicina is a synonymous of Prosecco. And when you ask for Prosecco, and you're offered a Prosecco also with mixology or not, well, this is bollicina, not necessarily Prosecco. And this is a positive thing on one side, but on the other side, unfortunately, in a very important wedding on the Maggiore Lake, do you want Prosecco? But then you're not offered a real Prosecco. So therefore, this is important and keeps the commercial value unaltered. And of course, without this, we cannot get to top versions. 20, 30 years ago, Valpolicella companies were producing Valpolicella wines, and now they are producing Amarone wines, preferably. So what's going to be the future of our Prosecco? So today, we are representing the culture of a family like mine who's been facing the challenges right now, and now it's the challenge of Prosecco. And tomorrow, that's my son. You can ask him. Anybody else? So it's the end of the session. Okay. Well, I totally believe that mixology is a part of our life. And if you think of the French market, think of what is happening in France. And we have a French guest here. And however, this risks to be banalized. But, you know, fashion trends go by, but the heels remain. So thank you for participating. Enjoy your Milan Wine Week.